Colleagues, happy International Women's Day. My name is Matthew Aruk. I'm the Director of Global Education with earthday.org. It's with great pleasure that I'm able to introduce this Earth Day Live event, Invest in Education, Invest in the Planet, the intersection of education, gender, and climate action. At earthday.org, our mission is to diversify, educate, and activate the world's largest environmental movement. And education is at the core of our mission, and we believe strongly that all learners should have access to the knowledge they need to understand, the skills they need to implement, and the attitudes toward innovation and participation in a green, sustainable future. Today, we're welcoming three esteemed panelists: Dr. Christina Kwauk, the Research Director for Unbound Associates, the founder and director for Kwauk and Associates, and the head of education and climate at the Climate Commission; Ms. Bindu Bhandari, who's the outreach and engagement manager for Climate Interactive; and Ms. Brenda Mwale, the program coordinator at the Green Girls Platform. The conversation is going to be moderated by Ms. Nishu Kaul, who's the director of earthday.org's South and Southeast Asia program. So the event is going to run as follows. I'm going to introduce Dr. Kwauk, who's going to speak for a few moments about her insights and research and experience. Afterward, we're going to turn the session over to Ms. Nishu Kaul, who will introduce the rest of the panelists, as well as earthday.org's My Future, My Voice Ambassador program, and moderate a little bit of discussion with the speakers and the audience at home. So just to introduce our first panelist, Dr. Christina Kwauk. Dr. Kwauk is a social scientist with a current interdisciplinary focus on education for climate action. She's an expert on girls' education in developing countries, 21st century skills and youth empowerment, sport for development, and the intersection of gender, education, climate change. Dr. Kwauk is the co-editor with Radhika Iyengar of the book Curriculum and Learning for Climate Action Toward SDG 4.7 Roadmap for Systems Change, and co-authored with Jean Sperling and Rebecca Winthrop, What Works in Girls' Education, Evidence for the World's Best Investment. She's published a number of policy papers, academic articles around the topics of climate change, education, gender, health, and international development in education. Thank you all again for your participation, and I'll turn things over to Dr. Kwauk.
Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak today with your audience here at earthday.org. So as Matt mentioned, today marks International Women's Day, and the UN has aptly named the theme for this year, Gender Equality Today for a Sustainable Tomorrow. So the connection here between gender equality and sustainability is significant, and something that I hope my remarks will make clear this morning or this afternoon or evening, wherever you may be streaming in from. And it's also vitally important to recognize this connection as we are hopefully coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has taught us that disruptions to our public health and our economic and our educational systems have a way of exploiting and magnifying deeply entrenched gender inequalities in society that create a disproportionate impact on women and girls around the world. The climate crisis is no different. So while drought and extreme weather events and climate-related hazards might be indiscriminate in their destruction, their impacts are most acutely felt by women and girls. Traditional gender roles mean women's daily responsibilities are more dependent on access to natural resources like water, fuel, and food. And as these resources become more scarce, the time poverty that women and girls face is worsened as they must spend more time securing these resources. Strict and constraining gender norms mean girls and women are often excluded from participating in household and community decision-making, meaning they're less exposed to life-saving information, resources, and skills. And as a result, women have lower life expectancy in the face of climate-related disasters, and in some cases, making up to as much as 90% of those killed. Those who survive go on to face heightened risk of sexual assault and human trafficking in crowded shelters or in temporary camps. And even in the best of times, girls' access to education falls prey to gender inequality. Before COVID, more than 130 million girls of school-going age were out of school due to poverty, and harmful gender practices like early and forced child marriage, as well as a host of other social and cultural and economic factors. COVID threatens to grow this number by 20 million more, and the disruptions anticipated by the ever worsening climate crisis could impact over 12 million more girls' opportunity to go to school each year between now and 2025. A growing body of research shows that in both prolonged and short-term weather-related emergencies, households engage coping mechanisms that put girls at higher risk of school dropout. For example, relying on girls to fetch water or collect firewood, or again, even forcing girls into early marriage. Such responses threaten to change the course of girls' futures while perpetuating their marginalization and their vulnerabilities. But what research also tells us is that while the damaging effects of climate change tend to hit girls and women particularly hard, well-educated girls and women can be a powerful part of the solution. Achieving gender equality by investing in gender empowering and transformative education is key to ensuring girls learn about their rights, including their right to bodily autonomy and their right to quality education. And when girls and women are better educated and included in decision-making at all levels, their families and their communities become more climate resilient, and they're able to adapt to economic and environmental shocks because they're better able to plan for, cope with, and rebound from climate crises. Data suggests that there is a strong positive association between the average amount of schooling a girl receives in her country and her country's score on indices that measure vulnerability and adaptability to climate change. But it's not just any kind of schooling that we want. Feminist climate leaders are demanding education systems transformation and the delivery of gender transformative education for climate justice. This means that schools and educational institutions not just teach about climate change, but they also teach the knowledge, the skills, and the attitudes to understand and act upon the underlying social, political, and economic drivers of the climate crisis. Such an education works to transform harmful relations of power, structures of oppression, systems of discrimination, and so on. A gender transformative education would provide girls and boys with the skills not only to avail themselves of their rights, but also to participate in important climate decision-making and leadership, and to secure, lead, and innovate the green jobs that are needed to drive green transitions to a green economy. But our political leaders aren't really paying attention to the solutions that could help them multi-solve for some of our greatest challenges simultaneously. And here in this context being gender inequality in the climate crisis. Just as an example, if we look at countries' nationally determined contributions or their national climate strategies that they submit to the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, we can see that leadership isn't really thinking about girls' education or climate change education. Together with Education International, I've been analyzing countries' updated, revised, or new climate strategies, and we're finding that no country is talking about the impact that an investment in girls' education could have on their ability to achieve their climate targets, and less than 25% of countries' NDCs are actually talking about climate change education. Such short-sightedness is undercutting the education, the skill building, and the capacity building that we need within our present and our future generations to be able to address and adapt to the climate crisis, not only today, but 10, 20, and 30 years from now. So I'm really excited about the conversation we're about to have, because I think we're going to kind of further elaborate the nexus between gender education and climate change. But these are just some introductory remarks I wanted to set forward so that we can sort of get our minds in the same place and really dive deeper into these discussion topics. So thanks, Matt. I turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kwauk, for your introductory comments. Our earthday.org colleague, Ms. Nishu Kaul, Director of South and Southeast Asia, will take it from here to introduce the rest of the panel and moderate that conversation. I'm taking notes in the background and looking forward to hearing what everyone has to say. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Matthew, for the introduction. Greetings, everyone, and happy International Women's Day to all of you. I'm really happy to facilitate today's dialogue with three amazing, power-packed women, two of who are My Future, My Voice youth ambassadors. For those who have joined us for the first time and have not heard, I'd like to give a little context about our campaign, My Future, My Voice. It was launched by earthday.org India on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And the campaign really provides a platform to young environmental leaders to join hands and share their innovative, tried and tested techniques that help restore our Earth. It's also a means to build bridges and networks across political borders and spaces. And as we speak, I'm proud to state that in less than 2 years, we have some 200 youth leaders from 90 countries across 6 continents. These range from really large countries such as US and Canada and India to most vulnerable countries such as Antigua and Barbuda, Samoa, French Polynesia, to really name a few, some that I'd really never heard of. We do have in our network youth ambassadors who are authors, who are actors, who are NGO heads, and grassroots workers, government officials, to name a few. As part of our My Future, My Voice campaign, we launched Ideas, which is called Inspiring Dialogues for Environmental Action series last year, whereby we invite world-renowned individuals to share about their environmental efforts and really motivate our young environmental leaders through their work. These sessions are moderated by one of our youth ambassadors and are held each month, broadcasted both on our India and global social media handles. We have conducted over 10 episodes of these Ideas webinars, which are held each month. And I'm very proud to state that we have hosted really distinguished personalities and covered several range of subjects from sustainable fashion to plastic pollution, environmental education, to name a few. So today, I'm very happy to be joined by 2 of our youth ambassadors, Bindu and Brenda, who will be in conversation with Dr. Christina Kwauk. Christina, thank you for your word of remarks and your opening statement. It was really impactful, power-packed, and I really look forward to our conversation just coming. So I'd like to first introduce Bindu. Bindu Bhandari is from Nepal, who is an outreach and engagement manager with Climate Interactive, and not-for-profit think tank, where her work focuses on using interactive climate tools to deliver systems-level insights that are policy relevant for mitigating climate change with equitable policies. Bindu is a climate change campaigner turned communicator. Over the last 8 years, she has worked in different capacities with a wide range of institutions to build the capacity of youth networks, educators, and business groups in addressing climate change. Bindu has received several awards and recognitions for her campaigns on sustainable communities and youth empowerment that include UN Volunteers Award, Collegiate Ambassador for Peace, Young Achievers by Nepal TV, and Eco Generation's Best Regional Ambassador. My God, I really have to race my words because Bindu, you have really at a very young age already won so many awards and have also been recognized as one of the 25 female climate leaders shaping 2019 by Ecologist. We're very glad to have you with us today, Bindu, as always. We're also joined today from Malawi, Brenda Mwale, who works as program coordinator for Green Girls platform. All of 24 years old, Brenda has just finished her Bachelor of Science in Food Technology at the Long University of Agriculture and Natural Resources and is also a startup farmer. She's a food technologist by profession and passionate about farming and grows different horticultural crops. She's a 2017 winner for Future Africa Leaders Award, 2019 Obama Leaders, among several others. An ambassador for Malawi-Scotland Partnership and also part of the team for Malawi National Youth Network on Climate Change and Green Girls platform. She's really passionate about involving youth actively in Africa towards community initiatives, and that has led her to really work on different projects such as free tutoring of students, motivational talks, personal development, time management, career guidance, climate action, and so much more. Her outreach to youth has led her to reach out to more than 30,000 students and brought back more than 100 students to school. These were all dropout students that she has helped brought back to school. Congratulations, Brenda, for that amazing work at such a young age. And she's also led several plantation drives and planted over 150,000 trees and several cleanup projects. Thank you, Brenda, for joining us today. I now open the stage for both of you, Bindu and Brenda, to briefly reflect about your work and your thoughts on today's theme, which is invest in education and investing in our planet. How do you both see your work related to the intersection of education, gender, and climate action? I'd like to first invite Bindu to share her remarks and then Brenda. Over to you, Bindu.
Sure. Thank you, Nishu. Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. I am so glad to be here in this panel alongside Christina and Brenda. So I'd like to share my personal story. I think that is the best way to head into this discussion. So back in 2014, when I first learned about climate change and how my country, the country I come from, Nepal, is one of the most vulnerable countries, it was in a way shocking to me. I was already an undergraduate student back then in 2014. And I felt I was one of the most educated youth of my country, and yet I had no clue about what climate change is and what are its impacts that will be felt and are being felt by people in my country. So that was the starting point. But as you can imagine, as a young woman from one of the least developed countries, from a small town, there were, of course, a lot of biases that I need to break and be in this place where I am today. So for doing that, I really found my voice through education. And by education, I don't mean the formal education, but through innovative tools that helped me, first of all, educate myself on the topic and then transfer that knowledge to a lot of people in my country, but also many people in other countries. So again, education, be it in the formal sector, be it in a formal way, informal way, or whatever means, is a key for any young women, men, or anyone, any individual to really get their voice out in the public, to really have this stand on what really matters to them. So I have found my way through this education to now go and pitch in my ideas to business sectors with distinguished policymakers. And this has really changed my life. So again, I think I don't need to elaborate further than that on this, because education has really given me a voice that I needed to make a difference and empower myself and also a lot of people around me in accelerating climate action. And I'll be happy to share about the tool later in the discussion. Thank you, Nisha.
Thank you, Bindu. Brenda, your remarks?
Hi, thank you so much, Nishu, and thank you so much for having me on the panel today. Also, I would also like to start by sharing my own personal story, because I come from Malawi, and Malawi is one of the countries that's mostly affected by the effects of climate change, be it floods, dry spells, heat waves, and the majority of the population that's mostly affected by these effects are women and girls. Because by the end of the day, you know how almost 90% of Malawians depends on either firewood or charcoal as a source of energy. And also about like 70% of the people are like farmers, and like majority of them are like tobacco farmers, and they rely on trees for tobacco curing, which means there's like an increase in deforestation rate. As we're talking right now, trees are cut down every day, either as a source of energy or because they would like to use those trees as for tobacco curing. So I started my interventions in way back when I was still in high school, and that's when I started my afforestation projects, because I like Mponela, where I'm based. It's where like almost like 80% of the people are like tobacco farmers. And looking at how like the rate of deforestation, I thought it was to say, okay, in as much as I'm still in high school, but then the rate at which we are going to will not survive. And if I will not do anything, then nobody else is going to do anything. It doesn't matter whether because I'm young, but still more I can do something because I've seen a need, and that need needs to be addressed. And either way, somebody else has to do that. And if it's not going to be me, then who is going to do that? Because I'm seeing the need, I'm seeing the challenges that are like how we're being affected by those impacts. So that's when I started by buying tree seedlings, and I started mobilizing chiefs in my community, and we started reaching out. Like for the first time, I used my pocket money and bought like 20,000 tree seedlings, and we distributed those to like about 20 villages. And that's why another local organization in like where I come from came in after they heard what I'm doing, and they donated about like 150,000 more tree seedlings. And that's what we used to like reach out to more than 50 villages. And for me, like, because now like I've finished high school, and because of the education that I have, you know, it's like a certain kind of like enlightenment, like you know better, you know, you've been exposed much, and you know the effects of climate change that are coming in, like how like you're visualizing in like the next 5 years, or how you're seeing your community in the next 5 years, how you're seeing in like your community, the impacts that are going to be there in the next 10 years. And that also gave me the boldness to say, if I'm not going to do that, and because I've been in school, and like people in my community, they know I've been in school. Like they give, like they listen to you, you know, the attention that they give you, you know, the like a certain boldness that you have when you're trying to reach out to them, when you're explaining these things to them, you know, it's like they're respecting you, despite the fact that you're a girl, you know. So that also gave me like a drive to say, okay, I think there's much more we can do. You know, what if there are like 10 more people out there who are also doing the very same things in their communities? So that's when I started reaching out to like students in different in secondary schools, students in primary schools, letting them be aware of what climate change is. How is climate change impacting us? How is climate change affecting our education sector? How is climate change affecting our health sector? How is climate change affecting our agriculture sector? And how best can we as youth be engaged and involved in making sure that we are addressing these impacts of climate change? At the very same time, being a girl, you know how women women are mostly affected, because right now women have to walk like long distances just to fetch water. They have to walk long distances just to get to fetch firewood. And it has also led to like increased rate in domestic violences, because now they have to be like, for example, at a borehole, you know, they have to be there for like, they'll go there at 3 a.m., you know, 2 a.m., and they'll be back maybe after sunrise. And their husbands now, they no longer trust them, which has also led to an increased rate in domestic violences and even rape cases. And in areas where there's like they're mostly hit by floods, you know, when aid goes there, and those people, instead of giving them aid like for free, they're also demanding something from the women also, to say, instead of just giving them the help that they need, they'll be like, if you want us to help you, you have to give us something in return, which is also increasing like sexual relationships among those that are mostly affected. Now they're trying to sell their bodies because they want help. It's the help that they want. They've been hit by droughts. They have been hit by floods. So this is something that I've seen, like, okay, that inferiority syndrome now, you know, that has come in our women, in our girls now, because they can no longer go to school. And when floods hit, they're using those schools as shelter, you know, as camps. And now you like, for example, right now with Cyclone Anna that has just recently hit Malawi, you know, schools in the southern region got closed, you know, for like 2 months. Students couldn't access school, like they couldn't go to school, you know. And at the very same time, you know, we've barely recovered from Cyclone Idai. We've barely recovered from the impacts of coronavirus. And then now it's Cyclone Anna coming in. So, and then the majority of the people, they don't know the connection that that climate, like the connection between gender, climate change, and education. And how are they going to know all of that? It's us who are supposed to let them know. How many women out there in the rural communities, they have a say, they have a platform for them even to voice out their matters, for them to actually know that their voices really matter. You know, so it like, for me, I still feel like, you know, there's so much to be done. There's so much that, like, if we can incorporate, for example, climate education in our education system, so that girls or youth or children, they can be instilled and they can know their responsibilities whilst they're still young. It will help us to have like generational success. Those, for example, the the commitments we're making right now, for them to be achieved, right? We have Malawi 2063 agenda. For that to be achieved, it's gonna require the young ones now. They have to own the vision. So that when they're growing up, they should run with it. They should know what is Agenda 2063, because the adults that are here, like who have established this Agenda 2063, by 2063, they'll not be there. It's the young ones who will be there to help achieve all of that. So I still feel like there's a greater connection between education, gender, and climate change, as far as climate change is concerned. So for now, let me stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Thank you for sharing your personal story. I think both your and Bindu's story of personal story and experiences on the ground that has really triggered climate resilient actions is really powerful, and I'm sure our audience will be highly motivated with both your experiences. I'd like to now ask my next question to Dr. Christina. Dr. Christina, you highlighted it enough in your earlier opening remarks, but as you know, the IPCC report also highlights on several occasions the importance of educating girls and women as part of climate resilient development pathway. You've also shared that climate change disproportionately impacts women and girls more. How does one address this system at a more systemic level, and what can organizations like ours and individuals do more to support more women coming forward on climate issues? For instance, Bindu and Brenda, both of them have been able to take a course of actions, because I'm sure they have been supported not just by their families, but also at some point in at a more systemic level. So what can the organizations do to really support more women coming forward like Bindu and Brenda? Over to you, Dr. Christina.
Thank you, Mishu. Yeah, I mean, as you rightfully pointed out, I mean, the IPCC for quite some time, in addition to its most recent report last week, points to the need to educate girls and women as part of a climate resilient development pathway. And I think that particular way of framing girls' education within the context of climate change is so critical, because it embeds the achievement of gender equality in and through education in our climate solutions. So in order for us to be able to achieve our development goals, our climate goals, we have to ensure that both girls and boys are educated in the process, right? And so I think when it comes to organizations like earthday.org or other organizations that might be viewing our conversation today, it's really critical to think about, three ways that an investment in education can really impact our ability to achieve climate resilient development pathways. And the first one is around just empowering girls about their rights and their ability to avail themselves of those rights. And I think when we see deeply entrenched gender inequality and gendered structures, social structures and systems, what we see the impact of is that girls and women aren't viewed as equal citizens. They're not viewed as equal humans in many cases. And as a result, their full potential is cut short from the day that they are born. And I think if we view our educational endeavors as an opportunity to really hit at sort of the gendered systems transformation, then at the crux of that means that we have to put forward women's rights, gender rights at the very center of what girls and boys should be coming out of school learning, learning that, we are equal to our brothers and equal to our sisters, and that we should treat them with the same care that we would treat our own selves even. The second way that I think organizations can really focus on is ensuring that girls and boys have the opportunity to develop the important green skills that are needed to fuel our transitions to low carbon societies. Right now, we understand that girls and women are excluded from these fields of study that will propel a lot of the green transformations, a lot of the green innovations and the technologies, right? And most of these occupations and opportunities will come from science, technology, engineering, and math fields, which girls are heavily underrepresented when it comes to higher levels of study, and also tracked out of from the early years. This isn't for girls, this is for boys, that kind of thing. And so ensuring that girls have the opportunity to gain a breadth of green skills is really critical to ensuring that we can begin to shift the nature of our economies. I mean, today in our fossil fuel driven world, girls and women occupy the majority of informal labor and informal work. And as a result, are on the fringes of society, right? On the fringes of the economic order. And if we want to see a green economy that is not just, green in terms of its environmental impact, but also its social transformation, then we have to bring women and girls to the center of that. And that requires that they build the skills to be able to do so. And then the third way is ensuring that there are pathways for girls' leadership development in the context of climate change and the context of community decision-making, all of these. We know from research that countries with greater representation of women in governing bodies and parliament, for example, have better environmental outcomes. They have lower carbon footprints. They have more environmental treaties passed. They have, stricter climate policies. All of these things are results of, sort of the social structure supporting more diverse decision-making and decision-making that reflects the needs of everybody and not just, a portion of the population. So I think if organizations, consider, their educational programming and really think about rights, think about green skills and think about leadership development, I think we can really tap into this connection between gender equality and climate resilient development pathways.
Thank you, Dr. Christina. I think that was very well summarized. I do agree with what you said. That it has to be from all the different corners, rights, skills, and leadership development, all of which is important and holistic. Thank you for your speech. Brenda, my next question is for you. What do you see as the role of researchers like Dr. Christina? What do you think, of the role to really support your work? And how can these pieces drive policy action in the aftermath of the recently released IPCC report?
Hi, thank you so much, Nishu. Right now, as Green Girls Platform, we are in the middle of doing a policy campaign on implementation of climate change management policy, whereby we want to really see gender mainstreaming in the implementation of climate change management policy. And for us to be able to do that, it simply means we really need researchers like what Dr. Christina is doing to actually see like what are some other people doing, like what are some other, for example, developmental partners or maybe the government or other organizations who are also championing climate action doing in trying to implement gender mainstreaming in the implementation of this policy. Because, for example, I'll be speaking from Malawian, my Malawian experience. The context of gender mainstreaming is there in the climate change management policy, but then is it really being implemented? When you go on the ground, you find that women are never included when it comes to decision making, tables. Right now, like the women that are in camps due to Cyclone Anna, when other people are coming in to trying to liaise with them and see how best they can go about it, it's men who are called to to try to come up with coming up with decisions, and then yet it's the women and the girls that are being affected by these impacts of climate change. Why are they being left out? In the process they are there, but then we really need to know, is it really being implemented on the ground? So researchers like Dr. Christina who help us, because as we are also doing right now, we are also meeting out with other researchers on the same issue. What are trying to see what are some of the things that they have found on the ground? Is the policy really being implemented? And how best can we see, where are the gaps? And how best can we ensure that women and girls are being informed? They are not being left behind, because the sole purpose of all of this is to make sure that no one is being left behind. And we have to know that women and girls are we have to realize that women and girls are a catalyst in accelerating climate action. And if we are to achieve just transitions. We have to make sure that every group of people is not being left behind. Everybody has to be on board. Everybody has their own responsibility. And for that to happen, like for the policies to be implemented, we have to make sure that no group of people is being left behind, because they are also like active, like they are there too in making sure that whatever commitments we're making, whatever process we're coming up with, we're developing with, whatever projects we're trying to come up with to help the people, they're the ones who will be on the forefront to help us achieve those commitments. So researchers like Dr. Christina are really playing a greater role and in trying to making sure to help us know if those policies are being implemented, if they're transparent enough, and to just so that we can help, we can hold accountable policymakers. So I think that's my take on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenda. And I have a comment from the Regional Director Asia of earthday.org, Karna Singh. She has said that in India, we notice that many girls drop out of education when they start menstruating, as there are no adequate toilets for them in the rural areas. And I'm sure, Nepal and Malawi also share the same, context. They're not encouraged to study, STEM education, and that is why, one of the programs that in India we had launched, which is Women and the Green Economy, really facilitated this engagement with young women in the rural areas. In the context, I would agree with, there are different contexts and there are different set of challenges in rural areas, and more policy interventions are needed for women in such areas, and programs and initiatives like Women and the Green Economy. And another program that we had launched to really facilitate green skills, as Dr. Christina, you had shared earlier, is an Earthpreneurs program, wherein we are awarding initiatives that are leading to more green jobs, and innovative ideas in the green sector. So that's a program in progress, and we'll be awarding on the Earth Day, on the coming up Earth Day. And one of the things that we will focus on is to really focus on women-led green enterprises and innovative ideas on the green sector. So yeah, thank you, Karnaji, for your remarks there. My next question is for Bindu. Bindu, hearing all of this, would you like to share something about, what are some of the innovative tools available, or that should be created to really ensure that people have access to the right information, and that organizations like ours educate more people, not just women, but both men and women, on climate science?
Sure, thank you, Nisu. Like I shared in the beginning, I have been using these interactive tools to educate people and communicate what science is really telling us about climate change. So let me quickly share my screen so that I can talk more about it. So here you can see one of such tools called NROS. It stands for Energy Rapid Overview and Decision Support. So this is the tool developed by the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, and Climate Interactive, the organization I work with. So when we talk about climate change, as Dr. Kwauk rightly mentioned, the number of young girls and women's representation in the STEM field is really limited. And as a science communicator, I have felt it like every single day. And like I mentioned, having a tool that gives you access to bridge the gap between science, public, and policy is really powerful. So this tool, NROS, is an interactive climate simulator. As you can see with this tool, you can create your own scenarios and see what really works to address climate change. As I'm moving these different sliders and solutions, you can see how our greenhouse gases emissions are falling and how we are lowering down our temperature rise. So this tool is interactive, and the best part of it is driven by the best available science. So we just talked about the recently launched IPCC report and other peer-reviewed literature, which may be thousands of pages in volume. And for general public or for even policymakers, anyone who'd like to understand about climate change, the climate system is really complicated. Even for someone like us who work in this field day and night, it can sometimes be overwhelming to put together all the facts and figures and piece those parts together. So having innovative tools such as this has really given me voice, and a lot of people. We have more than 100,000 people who have participated in workshop or game, which are adapted from this simulator. And they have been able to reach out to their business communities, to their family members, to their educators, to their policymakers, and say with certainty, say with data-driven tool that, see, here is the reality. Here is what science is telling us. And here may be the next thing that we need to do collectively in order to address climate change and focus on solutions that are high leverage, but also make sure that the policies we implement are equitable. So this tools such as this, which helps us see, the wider connections, the interconnectedness between our climate and energy system, land and food systems, and economy, really is something that is the need of the time, that helps bridge the gap between what the research is telling us, what the IPCC report is telling us, and what the general public the policymakers need to understand in order to act swiftly. So for anyone interested to learn more, please visit climateinteractive.org. And I'll be very happy to talk more about this if we have time later. But I'd like to pause there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bindu. I'd like to close this discussion with a comment from all of you, since we're running, we're closer to the time. With all of your comments on climate change education, do you think there's lack of policy attention on climate literacy in general, and as you've all mentioned, to girls' education in particular? And should climate literacy be really mandated at the school level in curriculum itself? And would that help? If there are any good practices from other countries, please feel free to share. I'd like to first request Dr. Christina to start her remarks, and followed by Bindu and then Brenda. Over to you, Dr. Christina.
Great, thanks, Nishu. So, I mean, the short answer to your question of, should climate literacy be mandated in schools and everything? I mean, yes, I absolutely think so. But I think the challenge there is, how do we define climate literacy? Because oftentimes climate literacy gets sort of anchored to its scientific roots, which is important. Like, we absolutely need the scientific climate literacy in there. But very importantly, as I think all of our remarks have highlighted today, need to ensure that climate literacy also includes the systems understanding of our sociological interconnections and how social systems interconnect with our natural ecosystems and so on. And so I think this is something we certainly need. It is not being addressed at a global level at all. I think where we have seen movements around climate literacy, there is, for example, Italy has instituted, or I think mandated climate literacy to be incorporated into their civic engagement, sort of education for environment, or civic education for sustainable citizenship. I think it's how they have couched it. And I think that perhaps gets the closest when it comes to, not only talking about climate literacy in the context of science, but also in the context of civic engagement, whether they also attend to gender inequality, colonialism, neocolonialism, all of these sorts of additional sociological and social political aspects is something that needs to be explored further. But I think, in the most cases, where we do see any movement around climate literacy, it tends to be within the scientific realm. Again, absolutely important, but we need to address this in a more holistic manner, in the systems manner that it is. And it's not just a science problem, it is a social problem. And I think that needs to be absolutely emphasized as policy level discussions continue, and as grassroots leaders like Bindu and Brenda continue to do their work. It's how do we begin to incorporate not only the scientific understanding, but the sociological understanding of the climate crisis. Thanks.
Yeah, I can go next. So I completely agree with what Dr. Kwauk said. And just to add, I feel like, again, there is a lot of room for improvement in how we incorporate climate literacy in formal or informal setting. But I would also like to reiterate the fact and the need that we also need to invest in the capacity building of not just young women, men, but also in building the capacity of educators. Because in my experience, what I felt is, although climate educators want to make change and share their knowledge and make some difference in this field, but they do not have means or access or support to the right kind of tools and mechanisms to make it happen. So yes, definitely a lot more to be done. And just to reiterate, not just through, having a chapter in your book or curriculum about what is climate change, what is happening, but again, through innovative tools that really help us see a bigger problem and see the interconnectedness between the social aspect, economic aspect, and the planetary aspect. Again, like Christina mentioned, that it is a social problem and needs to be addressed in a holistic manner and with the intersectionalities that are involved in this issue. Thank you.
So much has already been said by Dr. Christina and Bindu, and I can't agree more. I can't say it any better. And for me, I'll just add to say that knowing that climate change is a cross-cutting issue which affects us in all different ways, is something that we really need to be creative and get to realize, get to know the root causes, not just like what Bindu has said, not just trying to define what climate change is, what environmental management is, but then we really need to be creative, get to, there's so many innovations that young people are coming up with, and can we just scale up those innovations, trying to expose them more, and help them to be, give them the platform to expand, have their views be heard, have their innovations be seen out there, have their innovations be tested out there, because until we give them the platform for them to also thrive with their innovations, then we'll be able to be able to reach out to so many people out there, even in rural communities. It has to be something that even those that are not in schools can also get to understand, because everybody has a responsibility, and climate change is affecting everybody, irrespective of your education background, your financial status, or where you're coming from. So we have to create a platform where everybody can be able to understand, can be able to understand and get to know their responsibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Christina. Thank you, Bindu. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you all for sharing your rich insights and perspectives and your real life experiences. We're very grateful for this conversation today. As you know, the theme for this year's Earth Day is Invest in Our Planet, which really calls for a partnership, a greater partnership between everybody on this planet, be it businesses, be it NGOs, be it organizations, government, to really come together and move forward to taking more climate resilient actions. I would now like to invite all three of you to share any closing remarks, and how can Earth Day as a platform, and Earth Day not just on April 22, but as we say, Earth Day is every day, how can this big environmental movement can share, can be one of the platforms that is provided to audience, to people, individuals, and all of your organizations to really come and steer more climate resilient actions. Any closing remarks from Dr. Christina? We'll go first with you and then follow the same order of Bindu and Brenda.
Sure. Yes, I think invest in feminist climate leadership. I think that is key. I mean, we can see the follies of a leadership that is steeped in sort of a masculine, patriarchal, extractive kind of leadership. And that is not sustainable for the planet. And we can see that today in so many different ways. And I think if we want to invest in the planet, we have to invest in feminist climate leadership. It's just demonstrably different in the kind of care, the kind of empathy, the kind of solidarity that this form of leadership takes. And I think that is what we need. We need a revolution in leadership, and that is where I think it will be rooted.
Yeah, first of all, I just thanks to Earth Day Network. There is already a significant amount of work that is being led by and facilitated by the Earth Day Network. And I myself am a part of this My Future, My Voice ambassador program, which is great. And as a firm believer of achieving shared goal through collaborative effort, I would very much like to discuss further possibilities to empower people, irrespective of their gender, their geographical location, their education background, to do more in this field and make a difference, to really build that hope that they are not just vulnerable to climate change, but they can actually do something about it and make a difference. So yeah, I'll be very happy to discuss further collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the great opportunity on the panel today. I feel so board to be among the amazing Dr. Christina and Bindu, and even you, Nishu. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and looking forward to so many interventions and engagements in the future. And because I know sometimes it gets to a point whereby you feel like what you're doing doesn't make sense, you know, you feel like you want to give up. But one thing that I would like to share, like my message I would like to share to everybody out there who's watching with us right now, is to make sure that if it makes sense to you, it doesn't have to make sense to everybody else. You know, if you have that vision, just run with it, because you know the impacts that climate change is bringing in so many women's and girls' lives out there. So it doesn't matter if other people don't believe in you, but if you believe in your vision and you know exactly where you want to see your community at, just go for it. And thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This was wonderful conversation. This was really, I think, an amazing conversation that we could have on such an important day, which is International Women's Day. So thank you all. I'd like to now turn it back to my colleague Matthew for his final closing remarks and words of wisdom. Thank you all once again. It was great speaking with all of you. Have a good day.
So I just want to thank the panelists, Dr. Kwauk, Bindu, Brenda, and the moderator, of course, Nishu. I learned so much from listening in. I wish we had another hour to continue this conversation. I've been taking notes. My papers are full of notes here, so thank you for that. But just a few things that I learned that I think can help summarize and share. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you, and feel free if my notes totally missed it to stop me and tell me I'm wrong. But first and foremost, women and girls are key to climate action, the just transitions, and the new economies of the future, right? So that's sort of point one on International Women's Day. Point two is that education has the potential to be transformative, not just in the knowledge we're sharing, but also in terms of sharing values and our values toward addressing this climate action. And that has implications for power dynamics and participation and empowerment, and really looking at this at a systems level, and not just kind of a socio-environmental system and thinking about humans and their environments, but also a socio-technical system and thinking about the kinds of technologies that we're integrating into these socio-environmental contexts. Third, and all of these things are interrelated, right? Networks and partnerships and alliances, these are key, right? And not just for kind of these shared networks of people doing similar work, but sharing information and knowledge and the inclusion of it, right? These intersectional networks of people who are typically marginalized or left out of these conversations need to be centered and empowered to participate and sit at the table, as Brenda eloquently put it, right? We need innovative tools, right? So we need really strong tools that bridge this gap between research, policy, and practice, and give people the opportunity for action, right? And we need everyone's participation in this, and we can keep this momentum moving into Earth Day 2022 and then beyond into the future, right? These are long-term projects, but every kind of incremental step can make a difference. So with that, I'll close. I would encourage everyone to, as this panel has put it, invest in education, invest in our planet. There are a number of ways to get involved in Earth Day 2022. You can visit our website, earthday.org, if you want to register an event or volunteer or participate in some other fashion. So thank you again to all the panelists. This was incredible. I learned so much from your conversation, and I look forward to working and collaborating with all of you in the weeks, months, and years to come. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day. And to the audience out there, enjoy the rest of your International Women's Day. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.